Good Wednesday morning, everybody. How are we doing? Hopefully, we've got some energy today.
Good.
Rainbows and sunshine.
Thank you, Martin. I actually had two people on mute. Maybe we're going to have a good Wednesday. Maybe you guys are going to be chatty. Is it the lower rates? Is that what everybody's all jumpy about? I think that's got to be the topic that we start with.
I have just a challenge that I'm working on that I need help from you or somebody on this regarding a house that I am putting an offer on, and it has solar, and it's creating quite a bit of challenge for me because I don't have a home with solar myself, and it's becoming an issue with the buyer because he has to assume a huge looks like to him a huge debt in order to get into the house.
All right.
Solar to
Paul, we'll
fix.
have you. Let's hold that thought. Let me get through a couple of the headlines, and then we'll get to this deal.
Gotcha.
Awesome. So we got a buyer slash solar issue, and I love that you're bringing it, Paul. This is what we're looking for. I don't want to drive the conversation. I want to get through these headlines, and then we want to solve some problems. So
Absolutely.
excited to
Thank
talk some solar. So get through these headlines up pretty quick. Job numbers came in, missed by quite a bit. We saw 22,000 jobs added. I think that was just a little more than half of what they were expecting. So this pulled down the 10-year, and now markets are responding. So I think rates are, I think the latest that I heard were down around 6.25. I don't know if Eric or Dan wanted to chat about rates quickly and kind of what you guys are seeing. What's the latest on rates? I don't know if you can tell us where we're opening today.
Yeah, so this early, a lot of the rates haven't come out yet. Usually around 10:30 is when we see everything. But you kind of watch the 10-year and the MBS. The good news is we've seen rates drop down. We're in that 6.25 range. Yesterday I had somebody paying a point getting 5.8. So that's a huge opportunity there. We can also buy down into lower rates to really make things advantageous, especially for somebody who might be selling a property and they've been hanging on to a 4 maybe, and they were holding out. I can't afford to move up. They got a lot of equity. They got a lot of money to burn, so they're a perfect candidate to do a buy down, to buy it down the maximum they can. They can get down into the mid to low fives and still have their down payment money. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity there on people who weren't willing to sell their house, who are going to start coming out of the woodwork as we see these rates drop. The other thing we're looking at, the Fed's supposed to have another meeting next week. And a lot of the analysts are predicting that we might actually see a 4-point reduction, which will further push these rates down on top of the job reports. So there's a good possibility we could be seeing 5s without buy down very shortly. So there's a lot of optimism on the horizon, which is a good thing. We've all been, and all of us have been in this business a long time. The last 2.5 years, we keep on saying, marry the house, date the rate. And a lot of people have been dating that rate a long time. And we've all been kind of waiting on the horizon to see things get better. And it actually feels like it's finally happening.
Yeah, so I think obviously a lot of optimism comes with these rate drops, and that's going to solve our issues. And that might solve some of the issues that you're seeing in some of the other parts of the country. I don't know what it's going to do to the majority of the people on the call, which are here in New England, because I think we already have a pretty stable market. Like, if you look at the state of the market and you look nationwide, what we're seeing for the first time in I don't even know how long, 50 of the largest metros have 5 months of supply. And that's a pretty balanced market. I want to say it's like since 2015, 2016 that you've had that many major metros around that 6 months of supply number. right? And so when we're talking about supply like this in an average market, 6 months means if we didn't list another house, no more houses came to market, and we kept buying them at the rate at which we're buying, it would take 6 months to get rid of the current inventory. Right. And so that's a normal market. We've been at, a month or two for a while. So, but even here in New England right now, we're still in the like 2.5 to 3 months of supply. So I don't know that we need, right, a drop in rates to stimulate, because what's that going to do? It's going to bring more buyers back into the market. It's going to get back to that multiple offer situation. What we really need is more listings. Right. So for other parts of the country where, I don't know, I think some of the areas are getting hit worst are, the South. So it's Texas, it's Florida, where you're at 6 to 9 months of inventory, right? Significantly different market. And so these rates could stimulate now some buyers to get back in and bring those markets back to a normal 5, 6 months. So it's going to be interesting to see what it really does, because I don't know that we necessarily need more buyers here in New England. I think we just need more listings. So we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, pretty interesting stuff. It's going to be a little bit of a ride here to see how these rates are going to affect things. So I'm assuming, Eric, you guys are seeing mortgage apps up with the rate drop.
We're seeing a quick influx of refinances right now. So obviously it always takes a little bit of time for the buyers to re-enter the market. But we're definitely seeing people who are interested in looking at refinance options, especially people who bought over the last, 12 to 24 months.
I think the key thing where, if you're an agent on the call and what should I be doing with my buyer pool? I mean, if it takes another 0.25% drop and now we're down 0.5%, it's really the buying power that I think is going to become pretty interesting for people, right? What can I now afford? If it was, hey, I could afford the $300,000 house, now can I get to 3.25, 350 with these new rates? And now it maybe opens up a house that before I couldn't afford. And so affordability, I think, is a bigger piece of the puzzle. Eric, I don't know if you happen to know, like off the top of your head, where does affordability go? If I could afford 400,000 before and I'm half a point less, what does that do to is that 425? Is that 450?
Yeah, you're gonna pick up probably 25 to 35,000 in buying power, right around that neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Margaretta,
it'll definitely help, somebody who, especially those people who are stuck in the 275 to 3.25, them getting a $25,000 bump, that'll help a lot because it opens up a lot more inventory for them to look at.
Yeah. Margaretta, I see your hand up.
Yeah, good morning. The only thing I'm concerned about, I'm curious to hear from the lender. The job market report has come up. I guess they overestimated how many jobs were, created, and that number is significantly higher than what. It's actually lower than what they were saying. So is that going to create job insecurity? And, that's still creating quite a bit of risk. So I wonder how that really will pan out. Are we going to start seeing more people maybe getting into something but then losing a job? Or, because that just makes it harder. I don't know. I'm curious to hear from you guys about that, what you think.
I'll tell you my thoughts on it, Margaret, is like, be aware of the number, but I just don't think it can affect your day to day as an agent, right? Like the fact that the jobs number is coming in where it is, that's great. Know the number, but it really shouldn't affect your day to day. I mean, we talk about this stuff so that you guys are educated, that you guys can talk about it. But if you are, trying to be worried about what's going on with the job market, and I mean, if the market crashes that bad and there's no jobs, we're all in trouble, right? And so I think worrying about that stuff just doesn't make much sense for what we're trying to do here. I think it's more important to focus on the basics, know what's going on so you can speak intelligently, but start talking to your people. Figure out, make the phone calls, send the text messages, drop the voicemails, and figure out, hey, with this change, who's ready to go? because I mean, if you're looking at the long-term horizon, who knows what's going to happen with jobs? You know, I know a lot of the jobs they were talking about were they were government jobs anyway. So we really need to be looking for jobs that are coming from the private sector. That shows a healthy economy, not ones that are coming from government. Um, but with what AI is doing, I personally don't see us ever having the unemployment rates that we have right now, or whatever we're at, 3-4%. I mean, that just seems like those numbers are not even normal ever to be that low. So the fact that we're going to see, unemployment rates go up, I think that's inevitable for the rest of our time on this planet, to be honest with you. With what AI is capable of, I think it's just going to be a different world moving forward, where you're not going to have 96% of the workforce out there working. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but all right. What else did I have for headlines? This is an interesting one, and I missed that this was even in play. But NAR has been really pushing for this Homebuyer Privacy Protection Act. And Eric, I don't know if you can speak to this one as well, but President Trump signed in on September 5th, it looks like, HR 2808. This is the ban the sale of trigger leads. So apparently, when you get your mortgage and the credit bureau, does their credit pull, the bureaus were then selling this, and somebody that was looking to get a mortgage would then get hammered by other mortgage lenders. So I wasn't even aware that this practice was going on, but I guess it was pretty bad. When you apply for that mortgage, you're now going to get swarmed with calls. And so they put a ban on this. So Eric, I don't know if you're in a position to speak to this or.
Yeah, so it would literally be if you had your credit pulled, Equifax and Experian, they would literally sell your information to 100 mortgage companies, and these people would get phone calls, text messages, nonstop, all day and all night. And not only was it like, some people say, well, it's good, at least that they could find out what the best rate was. Don't forget, this can be daunting. It can be overwhelming. They're just starting the process. It could cause somebody to shut down and just say, "I can't handle this right now. I'm getting back out of the market for a minute. This is too much." So they're going to ban it because it's just it can be way over the top. It really can. Just imagine if all of a sudden 100 people had your name and phone number, and they thought you were a potential client, and all your phone did all day was ring and get text messages. They're still going to be able to mail these people, so they will be able to offer them whatever rate they want to offer them via mail, but they're not going to be able to blow up their phone while they're trying to have a normal day.
Any other thoughts from anybody regarding this? I mean, and this is the stuff, guys, when you say, well, what is NAR doing? And, where do my dues go to? Like, these are the types of things that they do well. They do lobby well. They do get stuff like this passed. They are pro-consumer when it comes to this stuff. So, I think this one makes sense, and I'm glad they were able to push this one through. All right. I got a couple of other things, but let's hold off on those. And Mr. Paul Phillips, you are taking the stage with your solar panel situation. So are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So
Um,
a little quick recap. You are representing a buyer. A home that you guys are trying to buy has solar panels. You guys are under contract for this property?
no, they haven't signed the contract yet because of the
Because of
issue.
this. Okay. And what exactly is the issue with the solar panels?
Well, I don't have solar on my house, so I'm not familiar with it. Apparently, it's under a 25-year lease buyout option, something like that. The solar panels are attached to the roof, and obviously you can't just take them down. He's concerned about, possibly damage to the roof because the contract that he read that the owner created with the solar company says that they're not responsible for any damage to the roof, things like that. And he's also concerned that he's going to have to pay for this thing for the next, for the remainder of the term. And it's $191 a month that it adds to the cost. And he feels like that he's assuming the girl's debt that bought the thing, and it's only been up for a few months. So he's saying, kind of, why should I take on her debt? And apparently, it also puts a lien on the house. And of course, his question is, how can someone sell a house with a lien on it?
So
And
I can,
so
so Paul,
that's kind of my,
these,
yeah.
yeah, these deals kind of, they happen all the time, right? So we're doing transactions with solar panels on them all the time. So this is not uncommon. It's just, you've got to get your buyer comfortable with taking on that responsibility, because absolutely, that's exactly what they're doing. Very rarely are you going to see where the seller is going to buy that out in order to sell it. They're just going to, if your buyer doesn't want to take on that lease, they're just going to move on to the next buyer that is willing to do so, right? Especially here in New England. Maybe if you were in the South and it was a different situation and you're just lucky to have a buyer, then maybe they've got the leverage. The buyer would have the leverage in that situation, and the seller would buy those panels out. But current market in the Northeast, I think the seller has the leverage, and they're just going to tell your buyer to go fly a kite, and we'll find somebody else if they're not willing to take it. The key thing here is to really understand what is the offset on the electric bill, right? So if it's only been for a couple of months, this is actually a pretty good time to see what those solar panels did, right? So show us your electric bills pre panels. Right? Okay, the electric bill is $400 a month. The electric bill with the panels is now $100 a month. So I've got a $300 savings, but then I've got the $191 to pay off the lease. So I'm saving $110 a month. This is a good deal, right? Or at least something that's bearable. So I think if I was in your shoes, that's what I would want to see. I would like to see the last 12 months of electric bills. I would like to see what if we've got last July and last August to compare it to this July and this August, right? I don't want to necessarily compare May and June to July and August. I would love to see last July, last August to this July, this August. What did we save? And then you got to be careful about what have they added? Did they, my electric bill went up significantly when I went to an electric vehicle. Right? So my electric bill is now a few $100s extra a month. So if they've done something like that, that could have changed their electric. If they put in a pool or something, and now they're running that filter a lot more. So have they made any other changes that would have changed the electric bill on a monthly basis? So those are some things to consider. Margaretta, your hand is up.
Yeah, the other thing is I just sold a house with electric panels, and I was on the seller side. And we had to give them $20,000 credit for the roof. The condition of the roof, a lot of times the companies install them and they assume that it's half-life of the roof. If it's not like a brand new roof, be careful with that, because the insurance company has issues with it. So it's not, and then there's a lot of insurance issues to get it insured, or the premiums around that. And my seller did have to, because they were like kind of on the edge of the life of that roof. I mean, it was supposedly over half-life, but the buyer had an issue with it, and we just kind of went along with it at this point because it was kind of there. So that is something to consider with electric panels those days.
I know one of the biggest things in those contracts, Paul, is reading what it costs to remove and reset those panels. Some of those contracts are violently expensive to remove and reset the panels. So that would be some key language to look at in that contract. And don't forget, it's not an all or nothing proposition. Let's say the buyout on those panels is $40,000 and the seller says, there's no way we're buying this out, right? Well, maybe there's a $10,000 credit that could be given towards the buyer's closing costs, points, prepaids, escrows, et cetera. Right? So maybe we can make a deal where, hey, you don't have to buy them out, but give us 10 grand towards those panels. We really don't want to take on the full burden of those.
One thing too I can mention is that Thankfully, my buyers don't have any problem with solar, which is good because a lot of the houses in the area were kind of put up by that same company, I think, and they actually chopped down a lot of the trees in the area so they could get good solar exposure. So the clients, it checks all the boxes on the house. But they don't understand that solar contract. And do they have to do any other contract with the solar company?
No,
A
you could
clean
just
contract?
no. Typically, you're just going to transfer that lease.
Okay, so it would probably be good to look up the lien on the house, right, on the tax records.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to understand what the total lien is, but I think more importantly is to understand the terms of that contract, and then the process itself to transfer the lease can be extensive. Like it's not just sign a couple of docs. It seems to take weeks, unless something has changed. But yeah, it just every time I hear about it, it's just not a smooth process. Lauren.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that too. So I'm going to be speaking to the seller's agent today because she's got kind of 40 years of experience, and she was going to give me her take on the solar,
Yeah.
and
So
maybe
I just want to just throw a public service announcement to years of experience. I've been doing this a long time, and I don't think somebody's years of experience means anything. Okay.
yeah, that's for
So
sure.
it's how many deals have you done recently that really matters? Because I can't tell you how many times, when I was in production, or even some of the agents that'll come to me that, well, the other agent says they've been doing this for 40 years. Well, that doesn't really mean anything because I've seen a lot of agents that have been doing this for 40 years that do 2 transactions a year. And so they've done 80 transactions, and we have agents that have done that within a couple of years, all recent. And I would put that agent up against the 40-year veteran all day long. So just be
Yeah.
careful when somebody says, "Well, I've been doing this for 40 years and you don't know what you're doing." And right. So I don't put much weight into years of experience, more transactions, and more importantly to me, recent transactions, right? With the
Yeah,
current
and of course
rules, regs,
that
etc.
that 40-year thing is basically if they're grabbing 40 years out of the, everybody uses that, seems
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Um,
So just
yeah.
keep that in mind. That doesn't mean everybody who's been doing this for 40 years doesn't know what they're doing. I'm just saying, there's a lot of people that'll throw around how long they've been doing this and they really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Including, well, I'm the broker here. I can't tell you how many brokers, right, can't get out of their own way, can't fill out a form correctly, don't understand the purchase and sale contract. So just don't let people push you around with, I've been doing this for this long, or I'm the broker, or, yeah.
Yeah, she's already been a little cocky here and there, but basically, I'm going to continue to work on the contract. The buyer just was a little turned off because the other side didn't seem to know what they were doing about that. And I told him that I would spend the time necessary to researching it and get the straight skinny for him because one thing about it too, the solar system's only been in place for a few months, and the seller says that she doesn't have any utility bills, yet. So
Well, that's not, I mean, everybody gets, as far as I know, everybody gets a bill every month. So
yeah.
I don't know why
So
she wouldn't
that
have
the
any.
solar is in conjunction with hardwire, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get your electric bill, and it's going to now have it should be less in theory because you should be getting some of your energy from those panels. So, you're paying your panels separate. That's a lease. It's a payment that you make, flat 190 a month, and then you should be seeing a reduction on your electric bill. So, Lauren, you had your
yeah.
hand up.
I did. So a couple things. Number one, really pay attention to the leases because usually, in my experience, they go up over time. So it might be 197 now, but most commonly we see a 2% increase year over year until the end of that contract. I've seen some start around $100 and end where you're paying $500 plus a month at the end. So that's important to make sure we look at the full thing there. It is adding to your debt to income ratio. So make sure if you have a house that is dealing with solar that the lenders know as well, because it does come into play. And then third thing was, yes, they have to apply, and the lease transfers are not like quick and easy, like you're saying. They always seem to be a pain in the butt. So start them early.
So they
Yeah.
need to apply for the takeover of it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because it's like a line of credit basically that they're opening. So like they want to check the person. They're not just gonna be like, okay, fine, you'll pay us now. Like they want to make sure they know who it is and gather the information.
And they've had the buyers had trouble reaching the company, and he's some of the reviews the company had were pretty good, but he saw some negative reviews too. And since he wasn't able to get through to talk to them, it's like so he's very sensitive about that. He did offer full price, full asking price for the property, and I know that the agent does not have another offer. I asked her that when I first started meeting with her if she has any offers. She says, "Yeah, I've got one." And then she said, "Well, but the one backed out." So, it could be a similar issue. So I know we're probably the only one on the table right now, or will be on the table if they agree.
Yeah,
Martin.
most of the
Nope.
time, it happens all like online. The communications, getting somebody on the phone is going to be very difficult with any solar company, from my experience.
Would that be something that I would maybe get on with the company and ask them questions, or would that be up? Because the buyer says, I really don't want to mess with it that much, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to
So
do the
Paul, I will
legwork.
tell,
No.
yeah, this is general advice, guys. Regardless of what information we are trying to figure out, we don't want to be getting information for that client and then relaying it. Hey, I talked to the solar company and this is what they told me, right? Unless you could get it in writing, because all of a sudden you talk to the rep at the solar company, they buy the house. It's not what they told you. They call the solar company and be like, I don't know what Paul's talking about, but this is our policy, right? And this goes for anything, open permits, codes, zoning, like make the client do all the research. If you can get something in writing, if you can get them the number to call, hey, I just talked to John at the building department. Here's John's number. I want you to hear it directly from John. So I'm not saying don't help your clients out and don't go and get the information, but I'd be very weary of just passing information and being like, hey, you're all set, Mr. Client. I talked to the building, the building department. I talked to the mayor. And we're good, right? So just across the board, if you can't get it in writing, pass the information along and tell them that your recommendation is that they hear it from the horse's mouth, that they verify it, etc.
One other question I has is the seller has claimed the full tax credit for the solar, and can he get in on that at all? Or
No, that's it. Yeah. So these are the types of
oh,
things to say, hey, you benefited in these ways. We're looking for a credit on this deal, or our offer is going to be lower. Right. So it
yeah,
depends on if you
exactly.
think you got the leverage or not. Right. If the property is still sitting a couple of weeks from now, you have more and more leverage. As the longer it sits, the more leverage that you have.
Yeah, understood. That makes good sense. Because he was asking all those questions, and in his mind, he was assuming her debt. But he's just assuming the lease on the thing, and apparently she paid back, quote unquote, the credit somehow. I don't know what that
Yeah.
means, but
Martin.
thanks.
Yep.
Just something else to keep in mind. I don't know your client's background, but also they may be qualified for the mortgage, but they may not qualify for the lease. It could be a different type of credit score. Just FYI.
Yeah, well, they're pre-approved for uh, way over the amount that the house is, so I'm sure they're okay. They are okay financially, and they're going through Zillow Home Loans is actually the where I got the lead, which is really cool. So still working it. Thank you.
Yep. Adam, you had come to me with a situation about helping a seller that you thought was going to be a list, and now the neighbor wants to buy. And are you in a position to kind of chat about that one?
Yeah, so it's actually a family member of mine, so it makes it a little bit easier because I wasn't planning on charging much of a commission anyway. But I just thought it'd be a situation that would come up with a lot of people where, once you meet with a seller, now they're in the mood to sell. They're probably telling everyone, "Hey, I'm selling my house, sell my house," and now all of a sudden, a family member or neighbor wants to buy it. So, normally the first step I do is explain to them, you typically never want to sell to just one person. You don't know what the market's going to bear. So, that's the first step. Is, hey, what if the seller says, "Look, I want 400,000. If you get me 400,000, or the family member or neighbors willing to pay 400,000, I'll take it." Right. But I think the first step is education of the seller to say, this is typically not the best route. It's the easier route, and having that conversation. And then the second thing is, I usually say, the amount of times I've heard that the neighbor or family member wants to buy it, if I had $1 for every time I heard that. So second step is, okay, if that's something serious, then you need to make sure they go get pre-qualified, right? And so what you're trying to do is, obviously hook them up with your lender and have them get pre-qualified.
Yeah,
So
I think one of the
that was
things,
basically
yeah,
the situation.
I think these are great points. Number one, oftentimes that person that wants to buy isn't even qualified to buy it, and you use the term you don't want to sell it to one person. We're really talking about you don't want to market it to one person. That's not how you get your best price with your best terms, right? Is if only one person knows that it's for sale, you're not going to get your best price and your best terms. Now, one way to do this, hey, your family member wants to buy it, but you also want to leverage the market, then let's bring this thing to market, right? And if at the end of the day, we could always give your relative last at bat, right? Your relative says they wanted to buy it for 300. Well, let's bring this thing to the market and let's see what the market bears. And if the market bears 350, now you can go back to the relative and say, hey, look, here's the deal. I can get 350 on the market. Like, I'm willing to give you a discount at 340 or something, but not 300, right? At just leaving too much money on the table. So you can't always do a situation like that where you can see what the market can bear, what terms will the market bear. And maybe as a listing agent, you're even going to say, hey, look, here's the deal. My commission is X if the market bears the price, and it's Y if your brother, sister, aunt, whatever ends up being the buyer for this thing. Right? So you can cut them a deal if that, if they are nervous about, well, if I bring it to market, then I owe you all these extra commissions. And, it's like, yeah, you might owe me 1% or 2% more, but what's 1% or 2% on 300,000? It's $3,000 to $6,000, and you were about to leave $50,000 on the table. So again, it's really about the net amount of money in your pocket. But so there's a lot of different ways that you can play it. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because a lot of times you're just going to list the property, especially if you're maybe dealing with somebody that was trying to go for sale by owner. Oh, well, I have this one person that's interested. Great. If that person still wants to buy it after we bring it to market and that we get the best terms, then we reserve the right to go back to that one person and say, hey, here's the best terms that I could get. Do you still want this? Any other questions or comments about that scenario? All right. I think it was last week we talked about sealing eviction records in Massachusetts, and that there was a change. I did do some research and found out that it depends on the type of eviction. So where they're making the change is for like a no fault eviction. These are situations where the landlord needed the unit back for some reason. Those qualify for immediate sealing, meaning as soon as that case concludes and it is over, they can immediately be sealed. So yes, you got evicted out of the unit, but here's why this shouldn't be held against me. Then there's non-payment evictions. So in this scenario, I got evicted for not paying, but eventually I paid and I get them all their money back. Then that can be sealed immediately. If not paid, the tenant must wait 4 years and then they could have it sealed. So you could have a non-payment, I get evicted, wait 4 years, show that there was a hardship. That's why I didn't make the payments. The hardship no longer exists. 4 years have passed. I can get that sealed. So nobody would ever see that I had a non-payment eviction. Fault-based evictions, so lease violations, et cetera, is a 7-year wait before you can get it sealed, provided that you have no other fault-based evictions during that 7-year period and no criminal convictions. So those are kind of some of the different scenarios about why somebody would get evicted and what the seal periods look like. So I think, I think those things all make sense. Hey, if I had a legitimate situation where my financial situation changed and I couldn't make it and I got evicted for non-payment, but then 4 years go by, I'm back in a better situation. I think sealing something like that makes a lot of sense. So I think we've done good with these new rule changes. Anybody have any questions on the eviction sealing stuff in Massachusetts? All right. Next thing I had, let's see if this is going to share. Oh, why does this do this to me where I can't get my share right? Overlays. Let's see if I can get this. Is it that? Why is it not sharing for me? Well, John, I don't know why I can't share, but I know you had shared something with us with a missing piece of pipe that you wanted to just kind of talk about a situation that you guys had at an inspection. So I'll let you have the
Yeah,
mic for a
I
bit.
changed it up a little bit. So I want to talk about porterhouses,
Okay.
and the health risks associated with that. We have respiratory issues, we have infections and illness, we have poor sanitary conditions. Have any of you come across these? I mean, I would venture to say yes.
I mean, I've definitely had the
We got
hoarder
a good
house.
story. Has
Yeah,
anyone got a
let's
good
do it.
story for us?
Well, let's do your situation where the health risks that could come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hoarding environments often accumulate dust, mold, and allergens, which can exacerbate respiratory conditions such as asthma and allergies. The next under that would be infections and illness. Cluttered and unsanitary conditions can create breeding grounds for bacteria, viruses, and pests. Poor sanitary conditions includes the excessive accumulation of items that can render essential daily activities such as cleaning and cooking nearly impossible. So those are the three highlights under risk, health risks. Any comments on that or the life experiences?
Anything to share, guys, regarding, hey, I listed a house like this, or my clients bought a house like this, or anything around the hoarder houses to keep in mind?
I mean, the next section would be safety hazards, fire risks, physical injuries, and structural damage if it gets too far. And then psychological impacts, mental health issues. Living in a hoarding environment can contribute to feelings of anxiety, depression, and social isolation. So obviously none of these are good, but if you can identify them, if you can, walk your clients, through these and let them know that nothing is not fixable for the most part, lay their concerns um, in these three critical areas. Any comments on those or issues that have come up in the real estate transaction or just a funny story around it? So we've come across some pretty strange things where a house was vacant for 5 years and it was just riddled with mold. And I mean, you could not see a different color of mold in that whole area from the standpoint of, this is clean, this is not. It was just straight mold everywhere. So those are things you want to take into account, and especially if somebody has a mold allergy or is sensitive to mold. We've been getting a lot more of those, so we're very cognizant of that issue and how we can help our clients.
John, I also had I finally got the sharing working, so I've got up the image on the main water line. What happened on this one, since I had already kind of chatted about it? Because
We
talk about
sorry.
not touching these things, guys. So what we've got pictured on the screen, if you have access to the screen, is your water meter, and then your main shut off to the house. Right? We've always said kind of don't touch this stuff. So this right here is your main shutoff, currently in the off position, right? So just general knowledge, if your levers are in line with the pipe, your water is flowing through the pipe. This lever right here is perpendicular, so this is in an off position.
So basically, if you touch it, you own it. So based on our standards of practice as home inspectors, we do not touch panels. We don't try to fix panels. If it's more than 6 screws in a panel, we can't open it. We can only open 4. So there's a lot of limiting factors that we have based on Connecticut standard of practices for Connecticut. And again, you don't, I've heard stories and, whether it was an inspector or a client or a BA that wants to get through a job. So she'll turn on a breaker or, turn on a water spout and not realize that there's a potential leak there. So again, our guys are not allowed to open valves like that. They're not allowed to lift boxes, which sounds strange, but there was an inspector a couple years ago now who basically just moved an empty box from one part of the room to the other, so that he could get access the um, to the attic. And there was some dust that came down, and it was obviously moved. Well, he got his license suspended for 2 years and had to pay $1,200. So these things are very serious to the state of Connecticut and obviously to SIS. So we never want to put ourselves or our clients in a position where we're compromising anything. So we're very focused on making sure that we're doing things right.
And John, that one is because you touched somebody's property or something, or like why would you get your license suspended for 2 years for moving a box?
That was strictly based on standards of practice for home inspectors in Connecticut.
That you can't touch their personal property, basically.
You cannot touch their personal property. Now the BA can, or the LA can, or the listing agent can, but inspectors can't. So don't get mad if we say, hey, we can't move that box. Right. We would love to move that box, but if the wrong person sees that, then we're in trouble.
Yep. Any other questions on the main shutoff or what the inspectors can and can't do?
You just want to make sure that you're not compromising the deal by, touching a water line shut off, or turning on the water when you don't really know what's going on and why that valve was shut down, or why that breaker tripped, or why isn't it in the right position. So just, question those and ask yourself, is that right? Should I do it? And I'm always about, no, don't do it because you don't want to be liable for that. And again, if you touch it, if you shut that water line off and the ball valve goes, then you potentially own it. And then that could include floods or anything associated with that valve shut off. It's just not, it's not a good situation if there is an issue with the valve. So again, I'm a proponent of leave it as is. Don't touch the electrical, don't touch the water, and protect yourself.
Nicole.
I have a question about this, but it's more for the lenders, less for the inspector. So if Dan's on the call, he actually is working with the client. So I have a client who was looking at a foreclosed home, and they do have an FHA loan, so it wouldn't have worked for them, but all the utilities were off and they were willing to pay to get them turned on for inspection. However, HUD would not allow the water to be turned on for inspection because there was already active leaks and breaks in the pipes. So is there any loan type that could actually purchase a house that can't have the utilities on? Or would that have to be strictly cash at that point?
Is that directed to me?
That would be more towards a lender. I don't know if Eric is
Eric or
still on
Dan.
or if Dan's on.
Just clarifying, I thought so.
I think both of those guys are off. And I would say, Nicole, my experience, you got two options there. Like you said, cash, but the other thing would be rehab loans. So there are some, rehab loans that are very minimal rehab numbers. I forget what the tiers are. It's like there's like a quick rehab at like up to 15,000 worth of repairs, and then if you go over, it's a more intensive rehab. But those are still great loan products that would be able to get through an issue like that.
So they had asked about the 203K loan, and I guess that still requires it to be inspected. They would cover it if there was issues, but it needs to be inspected so they know the cost of those issues. And then at that point, if HUD doesn't allow it to even be turned on for inspection, then they don't even qualify. So I wonder if there's other rehab loans.
Yeah, that might be for the quick one, Nicole. I can't imagine that's going to be the one for the extensive rehab, because I think that's going to fall into a lot of these properties with the extensive rehab is you're not going to be able to test the plumbing. So do you happen to know if that was on that quick one or the bigger rehab loan?
I think it was on the lower. Yeah, I think it was on the lower amount.
Yeah. Because I can't speak to, I haven't done a transaction where you couldn't turn the water on and it was a rehab, but I know Jared's done some monsters. I just can't imagine they were able to test the plumbing on some of these that they've done. So it's just understood that, they'll basically put reserves in there to assume that, the boiler is going to need to be replaced. And, there's not really that much, big ticket items that are going to happen when you turn that water on. You're going to obviously have pipe breaks, so it's mainly pipe repair. But outside of that, replacing toilets and faucets are not big ticket items. It's if you've got a boiler, and then it's really more the fact that you could have pipe breaks all over the place if it was a frozen pipe situation. And that's where it can get really extensive is, those pipes are running all over the house. So having said that, and I don't know, John, if you want to comment on it, typically when you have a pipe freeze situation, you're going to have breaks in a couple of spots, but it's not going to just be pipe breaks everywhere. So I don't know, John, if you can
you can repipe those sections pretty easily just by coupling them together. So yeah, it might break, you might have some water damage, but the repair isn't significant because you just take the galvanized out, which is pretty much what they have, pop in copper or PEX maybe, and be on your way.
So we'll try and get some answers, Nicole, from the lenders on what you can and can't do there. Any other questions on 203K or water, pipe break, that type of stuff? All right, the next card that I had on the table here to talk about was switching loan types mid-transaction. You know, can you do it? Should you do it? Can you still lose your deposit if you do it? And I think a lot of it, like a lot of stuff in real estate, is going to be it depends. So first of all, did you state a specific loan type in your offer, in your contract? So not all offers or contracts are going to include that detail. And if they don't include that detail, this is a good reminder to the listing agents to ask for that information. Because if you are trying to educate your seller on the differences between the offers that you have on the table, loan type is absolutely one of those terms that can make a difference. Whether it's it's going to require different appraisal standards or condition standards, the length of time. So as a listing agent, if you do not have that information, you should be asking for that information before you make a decision. Again, it all comes back to leverage. If you've only got one offer on the table, it is what it is, but I would still want to know going into moving forward with this client, what's the loan type, right? So if you have a certain loan type, let's say you put that you were going conventional, and then mid-transaction, you switch to FHA, you can't get your FHA loan, and now you try and back out, you don't meet the criteria for what you said you were going to do. You said you were getting a conventional loan, and now you're trying to get an FHA loan, or vice versa, right? So in those cases, are you able to get denied by both loan types? Hopefully, if you were trying to get your deposit back. But I'm sure there are situations out there where you may qualify for one, but not the other. And if that's not the one that you were going for, then you're going to have an issue of getting that deposit back. Does anybody have any questions on loan types, switching the loan types mid-transaction specifically? The other thing that I would be asking, I see your hand, Margaret, I'll get to you, when you are the listing agent regarding loan types is the down payment assistance program. Are there any down payment assistance programs, grants that are required for this buyer to move forward with this transaction? Those can definitely be difficult to get. They are 100% another contingency. And as a listing agent, as a seller, you're going to want that information so that you can educate your seller again on what exactly we're getting under contract with. Margareta.
I think you might have just answered that. I was just thinking because I've never thought of it myself, but if they do change a loan, is that something you have to capture through like a addendum and have everybody sign it, including the seller? I guess it would maybe depend if it's in a contract, purchase and sales, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you went in saying I was going conventional and now you're trying to switch to going to FHA, if you want to be able to back out because you couldn't get the FHA, you need to be able to get the seller to agree to that change. The seller may say, well, one of the reasons we went with you is because we don't think the house can go FHA. We had another FHA offer that was actually higher than yours, but we went with you because you were going conventional.
Yeah.
Right? So we're
I
not
don't think
willing
we
to.
ever practiced that, right? I never done that, and I know I switch loans around sometimes. Sometimes you're saving a deal, but you're going with the same conventional loan to conventional loan or FHA to FHA.
100%. If you want to be able to back out down the road and get your deposit back, you need to have the seller agree to that change to the contract, as that is a material change to the contract for sure. Any other questions, thoughts regarding loan types? Okay. Well, the other topics that I have are probably a little bit too big to get into today. We've only got a few minutes left. Nothing else, guys, going on any of your transactions that you want to just kind of throw out, something that you learned, something interesting before we wrap it up? All right. Well, I wish you guys the best on your Wednesday. Have a great next week, and we will see you again next Wednesday morning. Take care.
Thank you all.